All right. Hello, everyone. This is Don Hart from People Centric Consulting Group. We are doing a series right now that we are going to call it Survive to Thrive. And the idea is we're going to focus on videos initially here that talk about how do you survive this COVID crisis. But then we're really going to want to start thinking about how do we move into thriving, because that's really our better state as humans. So we're going to be working on how to get to there. So really super pleased today to have our first guest on, Dr. Jennifer Baker. Dr. Baker is a clinical psychologist practicing in Springfield, Missouri. And she's also the founder and director of a nonprofit called Good Dads. You can check them out at gooddads.com. That works to inspire, resource, and encourage fathers to be more involved in their children's lives. And she's also a proud member of our People-Centric Advisory Council, which I'm sure you put near the top of your resume. And we're going to talk, our conversation for today is going to be around coping. So coping through this crisis. So Dr. Baker, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm very good. This is probably less stressful for me because I don't have small children to manage. And I find that my clients who have small children to manage are more anxious, and understandably so.
That is a very big, and we're going to talk a little bit more too about that. So if you do have kids at home and you're trying to figure out how, I'm supposed to homeschool them and manage them and be in videos. I mean, we just had a video conference today that was hijacked by several kids on our team. So I get that. But so I'll talk a little about the genesis of this conversation. Dr. Baker, you and I were talking just last week about this situation. Our company's been going through this process where we're calling not only our clients, but past clients and just friends of ours, and just talking to them about how are things going. And I started to recognize this pattern, and I called you about it, and I said, it almost seems like people are going through grief. Is grief too strong a word to use for that right now? Or do you think that there is a little bit of a grief process going on?
No, I think grief is a perfect word to use. And often people don't recognize it when there are what we call ambiguous losses. Like obviously when someone dies or you lose a pet, or maybe you go through a divorce or some other traumatic loss, people know that there's grieving involved. What they don't realize is that there's also grieving involved for things that don't happen that were supposed to happen, like your son's softball season or baseball season, and you're really looking forward to that, or the daddy-daughter dance, or your child's graduation from high school, or the junior senior prom, or those milestones that you were looking forward to with your kids, or even just simply losing March Madness in the basketball tournament, or there's just so many things that we've lost our routine for daily life, and that just feels really weird sometimes.
Yeah, and you hear a lot of people saying, well, I know I lost that, but it's not as big a deal to what's going on in the world right now in terms of the virus and everything, but that doesn't really replace that grieving process, right? You still have to grieve those losses.
I think there are times when we just need to allow ourselves to be sad for the things that aren't going to happen. And we can't wait long enough for them to happen. They're just simply not going to happen. It's not like they're just simply postponed. Some things, because of the way the world is, are just not going to happen. And it's healthier to feel the sadness, acknowledge it, and then you're more able to move on.
Yeah. So that first step sounds like you just have to know that you're grieving. Be aware that that's part of this process.
And don't minimize it, and don't try to beat yourself up because we do have the tendency to say, oh, well, things are so much worse for some other people. Yes, that doesn't mean that you aren't feeling some loss as well. So yeah, absolutely.
So the first message is it's okay to grieve here.
Yeah, it's okay.
Even if you're safe and you're home and you're warm and you're healthy and all that stuff, there's things that we've all lost probably here that are.
I think it might even be healthy for you to say, well, what to your children, to your spouse, to a good friend, what do you feel most sad about? What are you missing the most right now?
Oh, so you look at the eye, confront it. Don't try to candy coat it.
Yes, because we say this, what happens when people die is that very quickly, within a week or two, people no longer mention that person's name in conversation. And for the person that lost that loved one, they really want to talk about the person that they've lost. So I think it's okay, not that you're going to perseverate on this and say that hey, act like other people's losses aren't significant. But it's okay to talk about what we've lost. And if you give permission to people to talk about that, they'll thank you.
Yeah, yeah, that's great advice for kids too, right? Because a lot of us have
Yeah.
kids. I mean, I know my son was planning on going on this huge band trip. They were going to go to Washington, D.C. and New York City.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
a trip of a lifetime kind of a thing, and
Yeah.
it's been canceled for him. It's tempting to say as a parent, well, you don't know, when I was a kid, I didn't go on
Right.
those kind of band concerts, or, hey, just be grateful that you even could have gone on that kind of thing. Think about what other kids are going through in the world. But maybe the better approach is to say, yeah, it stinks. Talk about, like, what are you going to miss from that?
Yes. Yes. That's exactly. If you want to be a star, with your friends, with your family, with your kids, ask the question and then listen to the answer and empathize with them. That gives them permission to be real, and that's really helpful.
Yeah. I like how you didn't say in there, like, you have to have the answer.
No, there is no answer to
There is
this.
no answer to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We like to, as a parent, I prefer to just say the answer is 7 and you can do this, something like
Yes.
that. We've had this new phrase that's entered into our lexicon in society now, social distancing.
Yes.
It seems like such a simple thing to do, but it also seems like it might be hard to do. Is it hard to do, and why is it hard for us to just stay home?
Yeah, well, it's not natural. Even for the introvert, even the introvert needs some social contact. We as human beings were created to be connected to other people. So, for people closest to you, and there are huggers in the world, for people, we need that human contact. That human contact is what makes us feel safe and secure. It helps produce oxytocin in our brain, which is a calming thing. Well, now, there are very few people you could touch, only the people that maybe you share a household with. Um, so I was thinking about my aunt this morning, and I think, yeah, how much I'd like to give her a hug, but I'm thinking that wouldn't be good. I couldn't touch her,
Yeah.
right? We cannot touch those people that we're not sharing a household with, and that is unnatural. But even more than that, we have to stand 6 feet away from people that we might be having a conversation with for the most part. And Americans don't stand 6 feet away. Culturally, that's not very comfortable for us. And we cannot gather in groups. Like I've heard people say to me, funerals, or weddings, or have been canceled. Funerals limited to 10 or fewer people, a child's birthday party where you might have had friends or aunts and uncles and cousins in, can't do it. And we miss those social gatherings that kind of remind us of who we are. Not being able to attend your faith community on a weekend where you would typically get reassurance. Yeah, you can watch the message online in most cases, but that's not all of what takes place in that environment. Usually it's the people you see, the way you encourage each other, the conversations you have, it's the coffee, it's all of those things. And now none of those things are happening. And that's not natural. And it does feel very unnerving, which I think causes people anxiety to go up.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point. There's a lot of times we get those things in strange places. We don't think about scheduling interactions with people. It just happens at the beginning of a meeting, you chit chat with somebody, or you go to church, and it's what happens, when you get coffee before you walk in for the service. How can we make up for stuff like that when we're doing a lot of things virtually?
Well, we have to be intentional about having conversations. I would say one good thing that has happened is we have done Zoom calls, my husband and I, with people we haven't talked to for a while. How are you doing? How's it going? How are you guys surviving? Those kinds of things I think are renewing, that it feels good. My daughter and son-in-law moved their table and chairs, like their patio table and chairs. They're lucky enough to have kind of an open front porch in their neighborhood. So they moved it right outside on their front porch. And then when people walk by on the sidewalk, they're 6 feet away, but they talk, and I can talk to them. And I said, well, how's that working? I said, do people stop? Oh, yeah. So they're visiting with people from their front yard. It is a fortunate for us that this is at a nice time of year, so that there are some nice days, not every
Yeah.
day, but you can
Yeah.
get outside.
I've definitely talked to my neighbors more in the last 2 weeks than I
Yeah.
have in a long time. You just see them outside and you just tend to wave. There seems to be like a hunger for this interaction
Yeah.
for people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
good.
so.
Another thing you and I talked about quite a bit is that just our routine. We're used to working from,
Yeah.
we're used to getting up at a certain time and you go to work at a certain time and you drive a certain way. Talk about the routine piece and how interrupting that impacts us.
That, because we are people of ritual and routine, if you think about it in the whole human history of time, people have rituals, traditions, routines. It's what makes us feel normal, makes us feel safe, makes us feel secure. And this has disrupted all of that. So we have to find a new normal or a new routine. And this is something that I've talked with my clients about. It's like, okay, you need to have a time to get up. You need to have a time to eat breakfast, take a shower, get out of your jammies. That doesn't mean you have to put on a tie and a suit and go to work, from your home desk. But it does mean that you need to get yourself into a new kind of normal. That's really critical to your overall feeling of health and well-being. And, we've had maybe a week or two here where we're trying to adjust all of this, but now it's clear we're going to be doing this for a while.
Yeah.
So, and set up a schedule. Like I had a staff meeting this morning with my staff, and they're 4 different places, but we scheduled it at 10. And so every Monday morning at 10 o'clock, we're going to meet. I might have smaller meetings with them at other times via Zoom, but we can all look forward to that regular meeting. But it takes practice, because most of us are not very good at doing this virtual office thing, but we will get better. I am sure we will get better.
One way or the other, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to get better. And it's a steep learning curve right now, but a month from now, we're going to look a lot better at this than we have been.
Yeah. It's tempting to put some of those things away whenever you don't have to get up at the same time. You don't have to. I've seen a lot of memes on Facebook. Don't. Why are you testing out those jeans now this time of year? It's a good time for sweatpants. It's what can you see above the level of the camera versus below the level of the camera. I've tried to maintain that, but I am wearing my slippers today, so I will say it's my Homer Simpson slippers. But the rest of me is completely dressed up. So just so you know. So let's talk a little bit about, we've talked about the social distancing. We talked about that we're all grieving all these lost things. We talked about the routines as forms of stress on us. Now let's talk about uncertainty. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. Nobody knows, like you said, we have a little bit of an idea of how long. Well, we know it's going to last at least a few more weeks here.
Right.
But nobody knows what's going to happen after that. I mean, talk about what that does to us as humans.
We don't like it. We don't like things where we don't know what. We like to have an end date in mind. And so people will tell you that, they'll say things like, I'm just going to be so glad when the surgery is over. I mean, but they look forward to, they can tolerate the anxiety associated with an event that they think is going to be uncomfortable or impatient, uncomfortable or maybe even painful, if they know when it's going to be over. The problem is we don't know when it's going to be over. It's helpful, I suppose, to read something about the 1918 epidemic, but that did come in waves and lasted really for about 15 months totally, which that's not very reassuring. But I think the reassuring part was they did get beyond it.
Yeah.
We just don't know, when are we going to get beyond it and how much longer is it going to be like this? I would suggest to people, find a way to settle in, because you're going to be doing this for a while. Hopefully, not for months and months, but we know for certainty it's going to be at least a month and maybe a little longer.
Is that just a matter of shifting your own expectations a little bit?
Yes. We need to be more realistic in our expectations. I don't know if I'm trying to remember who said it. But it was someone who survived being a prisoner of war. And he said that the people that were most likely to pass away, to perish, were those people who were overly optimistic, who kept thinking the next day or the next day or the next day, then help was going to come. Those people who are more realistic about the fact that we're going to have to be doing this for quite a long time were the people who are most likely to survive. And in fact, I think this prisoner of war lasted maybe 7 years, you know. So
Wow.
I don't know how people do that. I don't even know how people last 3 years, but there are some amazing stories of people who lasted a very long time. For instance, as a prisoner of war in a Japanese internment camp during World War II. He said those people who were too optimistic did not last. Those people who are more realistic. That doesn't mean you have to be depressed or negative, but it does mean that this is the way it's going to be for a while.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, you bring up a great point. As I've talked to some businesses who are kind of circling the wagons and saying, well, we're just waiting until we get out so we can get back to work. And then I see others, and I think our team's done a really good job of this, of saying, no, we're back to work.
Yeah.
We never left work. It's just very different, and it looks different.
Yes.
And what we do maybe looks different, or it's done in a different way. And I think that's helped our attitude tremendously towards it, is it's not just wait.
It's interesting you said that, because I was just talking to our marketing and media person just before I met with you, and I said, we're still doing what we've done. Our mission is the same. We want to help dads be more fully engaged with their child. We're just doing it in a different way. And there were things that we were kind of thinking about doing, but we hadn't moved on to doing. Well, now we're doing them. Now it's like this week we're going to get this done. So we were able to put aside some things that we were worried about. We just no longer have to worry about some of those things. But now we're thinking about new thoughts. It's not entirely comfortable, but I don't think that progress is. I think it's more like, okay, now that there's this is going to be the impetus to get us to do what we need to do.
Yeah. We're not designed to be comfortable. We sometimes try to follow that, right? But a lot of learning occurs outside of our comfort zone too.
Right. We learn. I don't know that I've ever learned anything really well without some discomfort of some sort. Yeah.
So there's some opportunities maybe nestled into this.
I think so. I mean, now think about it. Now we don't have the competition with Good Dad's events, because we did do a number of events with kids' sports schedules. We just simply don't have that. And now we have dads at home with their kids, but we still need to help those dads be engaged in a meaningful way. So how are we going to do that? And what are maybe some other things that we could do that we really would have never had the time or the space in our schedule to do? So, I think it's an exciting opportunity if you look at it that way.
Yeah. A friend of mine says, never waste a good crisis. None of us would choose the situation, obviously, but given the situation, there are things that we can all do to innovate and maybe think a little bit differently about what we do, but maybe change the way we do it.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
I think that's a great point. So I had an experience I'll share. I'll get a little bit personal here,
Sure.
But I think this is good just in terms of how we're all dealing with this. I was having a conversation with my mom, who lives in Nebraska, and I was telling her, she was asking me how the business was doing and clients and everything. And I was just kind of telling her, I was venting a little bit. And I said, a lot of business people I talk to right now, there's so much suffering, so many people doing layoffs, so much uncertainty in terms of the futures of the business and everything. And I said, now, how are you doing? I finally asked her, how are you doing? And she said she has 3 friends who have been diagnosed with coronavirus who are not expected to survive. So that was my first contact with somebody who knew somebody directly who was, not only were they sick, but and these were folks that were friends of hers from church who are all in their 90s and 100s, and it's gotten into a nursing home. So then I get off that call a little bit, and I'm feeling a little bit guilty, a little bit like, okay, I should have thought of that. I should have gone there first. I should have felt this way. And I found myself checking that, and I hear other people saying the same way. Well, I know I should feel this way. Dr. Baker, how should we feel?
The way you feel. I was thinking about that. If we go back to the whole grieving comment, Grieving is not always sadness. Some days you feel angry. And I'm going to guess that some of your people, just like some of my people, even myself, sometimes feel irritable. Like, why can't we? When is this going to be over? Why can't we do this thing? Why can't we, be together with people that we love? Why do we have to do it this way? Anger is a part of that. And
Mhm.
sometimes there's denial, and it's real easy to deny this some days because you get up, you go outside, it all feels so normal, the sun still comes up, the sun. So there are different stages. There's bargaining, rationalization that we think, oh, maybe this is going to bring this to an end quickly. And so, we do all those things. Those feelings are all completely normal in any situation like this. Just recognizing that what you feel today, you may not feel tomorrow.
Mm.
But and some of us just we get sick of listening to the news. Okay, turn it off. Whether you listen or not, the news is not going to change. And when you're feeling ready to go back to it, I've started saying, friends don't let friends watch the news alone.
That's really true.
Maybe you need someone sitting next to you when you're watching the news.
Yeah. Yeah, you get into the 24-hour news cycle now. You can really bombard yourself with it.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Unless that person is more anxious than you, in which case you should not watch the news with them. That's not going to be helpful. Don't do it.
Watch
So
them get up and scream and run out of the room, and then you're like,
yeah.
"Ooh, that did not make me feel better."
Right.
So
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, Don, I think there could be a wide range of feelings, and those could change several times in the same day, and that is completely normal.
Yeah, yeah. So we have to acknowledge that there's this grieving process. There's this natural stress that's been put on us for all these different reasons. And the first thing maybe we do is just take a little bit of pressure off ourselves and just get back to who we are and say it's okay to feel sad sometimes. It's okay to feel angry sometimes. It's okay to be selfish sometimes. As long as we recognize what those feelings are, deal with it, acknowledge it, and then move on from it and know that it's going to change.
Yeah, and let me just say that recognizing that that's going on and the people closest to you too, that you love, that you might say, oh, this is hard on him too. This is hard on her too. Sounds like they're feeling a little sad. Sounds like you're feeling a little sad. Just kind of identifying that feeling in someone you care about. Yeah, I guess that's how I am feeling. And usually that just does so much when we can kind of recognize that someone else sounds like you wish this hadn't happened. Yeah, I do, but I feel so like I shouldn't be more great, like I should be more grateful. Of course, we all feel like that, but it does sound like you just wish we could go back to normal. Yes, I do. That's just so reassuring when someone else gets us. So a person that gets somebody else, they're going to feel a lot better.
I think that's a great tip when you think about leaders of a team. So somebody who runs, a lot of people who are going to be watching this are going to run companies, are going to be managers. And sometimes you think, well, we've got to be strong for our people.
Yeah.
But that goes exactly against what you just said, is we are looking for people who say, oh, you feel sad too. That makes me, it doesn't make you feel happy that you feel other people are sad, but it makes you feel more, you can commiserate with others. So there's a good thing as a leader to be a little vulnerable and say, I stood in front of my team last week and I said, I'm a little scared about what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen here. This could be devastating for our team. And you're right. I saw my team kind of look at it like, wow, so this is all real. We're all feeling this way, but then we could all talk to each other and listen, and then we can move on, right?
Yes.
Then you can move on to the next step.
That's so wise. And I think it's worth repeating. The time for rah, we can all get through to get this together, go team, that's over. That's not reassuring to your team. So being real and vulnerable, just like you said, not, throwing in the towel, wringing your hands kind of stuff, but saying, I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm concerned, but I'm here. And I care about what's going on here. That sort of real transparency goes a long way to helping people feel valued by you. And that's probably the most important thing you can do right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great advice. Great tip. So I want to circle back to the thing we started off the conversation with a little bit, is these kids at home.
Yes.
You know, short of partnering with somebody like Invisible Fence, you know, and getting little shot collars or something for that. But I know there's folks that are really stressed out about, like, I'm supposed to be nurturing at home and I'm also supposed to be working. What tips do you have, if any, for those who are working home with young kids?
Okay. Well, a variety of things, but let's just start with the school day, for instance. All right. You people who homeschool will tell you that your children can accomplish a lot more in a day than what they do in a typical classroom setting. So in other words, 2 or 3 hours may be sufficient, and then the afternoon could be devoted to something else, or depending on what your family schedule is. Um, there's a lot of wasted time in a typical classroom when you're waiting for other people, you're waiting in line, you're waiting for whatever. So you're going to be freed up from that. And you're also going to be able to have some genuine experiences with your kid, but it shouldn't take all your time. You could also, I have a sister who's a grandmother, and via Zoom, she is doing lessons with her 3 grandsons every day. And then her husband's doing the history or social studies part of it. So you could enlist other people. I've said to my daughter, hey, let me be in charge of any research papers, any writing, anything. I'd be happy to do that. So there are things you could involve other people in your life who are looking for things to do because they're home. So let those people assist you in that. And remember, 2 or 3 good hours a day is good. Now, the other really good thing for people to know is about the first half of every school year, or at least the first 25 to 30% of it, is review of what was covered in the end of the previous year. So it's not like the sky is falling and the earth is coming to an end with your child's education and that it's all on your back. Do the best you can. The children will be okay. You don't want to just park them in front of the television, but you're not speaking to people here who are just going to park their kids in front of the iPad or the computer. You're talking to people here who, you know, really do care about their child's education and want to know what's the best they can do.
Yeah.
So that would be number 1. Number 2, if your kid's stuff is all over the house, pick it up. That just, I mean, I talk to people and that just drives them crazy because they're like, well, now we're home all the time, 24/7, and their stuff is all over the place. I'm like, why? Do not do that. Your kids have got too much stuff. Put it, put it all in a place, and then get out. Only tell them to pick out their 5 or 6 favorite things, and then put the rest away. It drives you crazy. It drives them crazy. See, most people go to workplaces where it's relatively tidy, it's structured, that routine is reassuring, and that makes them feel like, when I'm focused, I know what to do. The problem is when there's stuff all over the place and their schedule's out of whack, then they feel their lack of focus, which only makes them feel more anxious, and then makes them feel worse. So, you know, your child may confine his stuff to his room or her room, but then, you know, you may have some new standards about how that's got to look, especially if we're not being very productive. So remember, this is what I say about children's toys. When they're left, I mean, they could be junior high, high school kids leaving their stuff all over the house. Their family room, living room, dining room, kitchen, you know, shared areas. Those are areas, it's like the tow-away zone. When you leave your car in the tow-away zone, what happens? It gets towed away. And then how do you get your car back? Well, you go down and you look through the fence and you see it over there. And then they want to have some money in order to get that back. So kids can pay for their stuff that's towed away, and parents just be real religious about this for a week or so and then stay with it, and you'd be surprised how much easier your life will be. They can pay you back in money, or they can pay you back in chores. And even 6 and 7-year-olds are capable of dusting the baseboards of your house, you know, wiping crumbs up. There's all kinds of things that children can do. Match up socks, help with the laundry. You can do math while you're doing laundry. So there are ways that your children can be very helpful to you, while also, if they leave their stuff out all over the place, you have a strategy. It's the tow-away zone.
I love that. I love that. Please don't tell my wife that one, because I feel like I'm going to be missing a lot of coffee cups and ice cream dishes pretty soon.
Well, in all truth, Don, my husband experienced the miracle of the tow-away zone a few times himself, and it dramatically changed his behavior. And
Oh
also,
my.
I stopped reminding, nagging, complaining. I just towed things away, and yeah.
Well, and if that works on Paul, it will work on anybody. I'll just say that right off the bat. If that reigns him, man, that's fantastic. So what other tips do you just have for in terms of people right now, in terms of just dealing with their own stress level, things that they can do just to try to help to get things maybe we haven't talked about that would help them a little bit?
Well, someday this will be behind us. And interestingly enough, one of the things I'm doing now when I have more time at home is I'm cleaning closets and so on. I found an article. I found the Smithsonian Magazine, which I subscribed to back in 2017. And so I was looking at it, and it had a huge article in it. Now, this was November 2017 on the 1918 pandemic. Several pages. I'm like, oh my gosh. And in there, they interviewed the director of the CDC who is retiring. What's the thing that keeps you up most of the night? A pandemic, a worldwide pandemic. It was all in there. And then the next article is, where is the pandemic if we have one? Where's it likely to come from? China. Had a whole article on that. So I'm reading the history of this, absolutely fascinating. And 2 years prior to when this all breaks out, it was really amazing.
Yeah.
So someday this will be the story that people tell other people. Someday, and you look in that article, there were some very interesting photographs. There were some very interesting stories that people had to tell of their experience. It very likely started in Kansas, which, well, how did it get to be the Spanish flu then if it started in Kansas? That's a very interesting story about what was going on in the world at that time and the politics of all that. We're going to tell stories about this. And that's why I encourage parents with children as young as 6 or 7 to write a few sentences every day about what's going on. What's it like to be an 8-year-old in the 2020 pandemic?
Wow.
That's a story an 8-year-old will tell her grandchildren someday. And even adults writing down things. Some people are very artistic, so they could create a drawing or a painting or some other thing that they do. My husband is creating his own pandemic garden. So, there were victory gardens during World War II. He's doing gardening. So write, do something creative. Don't waste this time. This is a special moment in history. We're all living it. Do something creative to talk about it. I think that helps give more meaning and purpose to it. Plus, it helps us learn the lessons of history. And, history has been kind of overlooked because of science and math in the last year, which are great subjects. But can you tell I was a history minor in college? So.
I've got all history books behind me, if you notice that,
Yeah.
for engineering.
And you know what? We could also, this particular article had about a half a dozen books that were written at that time by various authors that were kind of reflecting, what was going on with the 1918 pandemic or Spanish flu. So that might be another thing that you could read a book about or learn out more about then and then compare it to now. I think that would be a good example of something. I think it's also good to focus on what you have versus what you don't. Now, sometimes people, when I suggest this to clients who are struggling with depression, they're like, yeah, well, that really helped. But you know what? They've also come back and said, that really does make a difference. So that's every day, get up and make a list. Don't just think of it in your head. Write down 3 to 5 things that you are grateful you have. And they have to be different things than you mentioned the day before. So it could be the fact that you have a flush toilet. Okay, yes, I know that we're struggling to find enough toilet paper, but we're not going out to the outhouse
Right. Yeah.
And we have hot and cold running water. Isn't that a great thing? Because my grandmother would have been pumping that water to make the coffee for breakfast after she visited the outhouse. So that, there's a lot of things we could be grateful for, and just focusing on that, I think can be helpful. And then, like I said, finding this is an opportunity because we're not going out in the evening. So get on FaceTime, get on Zoom, reconnect with old friends, check in with them, see how they're going, renew relationships. I know some people are even writing letters again. So, wow, who knew?
Yeah. 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 You get excited to get the mail again. It's different.
Yeah,
Feelings.
right.
Yeah.
So
Well,
those are some things I'm thinking about. Yeah.
those are fantastic, and those are tangible, because I know I've talked to a lot of people who are just saying, like, maybe I acknowledge that I'm feeling this way, but I don't know what to do about them. So those are some really good tangible tips, and some great takeaways. Dr. Baker, this has been fantastic. I think you've given us some really good
Thank you.
tangible things. I mean, my takeaways from this is, first of all, to know that while we're going through this, there is no normal necessarily, but normal is the way whatever we're feeling in a lot of ways.
Right.
So just acknowledging where we're at, but also to acknowledge it together.
Yes.
I've told a lot of businesses, hey, you're not in this by yourself. I lead a conference call with national publishers, and there were 60 or 70 of them on the line all together. And at the end, the amount of gushing that they had for each other, just thank you for being on here and sharing the stories and sharing the pain.
Yes.
We know that we're in this together, kind of a thing. That's got the potential of bringing teams together, bringing families closer together, bringing neighbors closer together. And we wouldn't choose the situation, but let's take advantage of it. I think that's a great message. So appreciated having you on here. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So I strongly encourage all of you who have watched this to check out and support Good Dads. You want to tell us a little bit about Good Dads?
Well, Good Dads began a little over 5 years ago, and our focus is on helping dads be more engaged with their children. We want them to feel successful at that, to feel like I'm creating good memories with my child. And it's for any dad. It's not just a low income dad or a high income dad, any dad. So we have a number of things that we're doing, and I'm particularly excited because right now, if you go to our homepage, we have a little green button that says COVID-19 resources. But it's not, they're practical, they're positive, and they're fun. So we have some really fun things. We have a couple we interviewed that it's like, so what's it like 24/7? And it's a very fun, they have an 18-month-old, what that's like. Another dad talking about what it's like to be together all the time with small children. So we do positive, proactive, practical things that help people feel engaged with each other. We do events, but not right now. So check out our online resources.
Okay, well, that sounds great. I got to look at that a little bit. It's pretty awesome website. You've got lots of information on there, and make sure you check out that COVID button. I like that it's just not the news and the bad stuff, but fun stuff on there too.
Right.
A lot of great resources. So thank you everyone for your time today. Again, this is the Survive to Thrive videos. Come watch these. This is not just about getting through this. This is about getting through this and coming out even better on the other side. So some of the future topics we're going to be throwing out, we're going to talk about cash flow. That's really important. We're going to talk about some resources that are coming from the government here and things that have been passed recently, and also things you can do within your team to manage cash flow. We're going to talk about marketing. How do you market? We're going to talk about selling, because at some point you're going to have to, for those of you who own businesses, you're going to have to go back to selling things. I know we feel funny about that right now, but we're going to have to go back to that. And then we're going to talk about serving in a crisis. How can we serve each other? And then we're going to talk about leading in a crisis. What can we as leaders do? And we're also going to talk about visioning in a crisis. Then we've also got a section coming up. We're going to talk about protecting yourself in a crisis. We're going to talk about things like security, internet security, things like that. So that's all going to be part of this series. We're going to be bringing lots of other experts on to be able to talk through this. Dr. Baker, thank you so much. Take care of yourself, and appreciate you all. Thank you.
Bye.